Adelita Husni-Bey is an artist and pedagogue investing in anarcho-collectivism, theater, and critical legal studies. Great love for my anarchist comrades always. Adelita will speak on teaching COVID through critical geography. Adelita Husni-Bey, please.
Hi, everybody. Really pleased to be here. Thanks so much, Rob, for the invitation. I just wanted to start off by saying how important Rob's work has been in my thinking and speak to the fact that obviously Rob's work has sort of broken the boundaries of the epidemiology community and reached artists and poets, and that's really, I think, the mark of a great work. To be able to break those boundaries and not just sort of rely on the echo chamber in some ways. So I really love Rob's work for his kind of poetic and vibrant analysis, which is very much kind of written in real time. And his tying of the riots to the administration, to the flows of capital and policy, and how all of this sort of can exist in the same space while being really deeply thought and connected. So I think what I just want to say is maybe a small anecdote to start off with, which is I always ask my students, where does COVID come from? And often the answer in American liberal kind of universities is, well, it comes from the specific geographic space, which is Wuhan, from the wet market, and that obviously carries with it all the kind of xenophobic baggage that it comes with. But I think that what Robert really teaches us is that, the origin point, of course, is not purely geographical, is to be situated in the kind of flows of capital, and specifically in the kind of ideological makeup that allows for certain policies to exist, for certain policies to, expand farming, industrial farming to the degree to which it has expanded, to encroach on the wilderness, to allow for genetic pools of animals to become incredibly weakened, and for animals to suffer in the process, of course. And so I think that everyone who's come before me has, feels slightly humbled in some ways to be part of this incredible group of people. But I think what I'm also trying to say is that there's a kind of ideological part that we really have to work on. And as a cultural worker and not so much a scholar, that's kind of where I think that, there really needs to be discourse around that, and really efforts in culture to make these things visible. So what I want to do is to share very briefly some work and just to offer some context so that you understand what you see. But the way I work is through workshops. So through this political education often happens with groups of people that I don't really know myself, but get to know in the process. And so I did work from April to May 2021 with a small cohort of unionized nurses, both from the United States and Denmark. And we were invited I invited them to partake in an online workshop to discuss the kind of social construct of necessary work and this main contradiction that emerged during the pandemic, which is essentially why does, a nurse, which everyone's spoken about so clearly, why is our figures that are so important to reproductive functions of capital and of society itself so devalued? And of course, the answer is, well, it's systemically made that way. But yes, that's when organizing comes in and is important. So I'll just share my screen. Nothing is scripted. This was truly just a sort of moment of sharing with nurses over the course of over a month, and it's a small edit of a much longer film. So I'll go ahead and share that quickly.
And then when the nurses came, we're like, this is what we need you to help us with, so that we had a plan, because management had no plan. So to me, that was like, before it even came to our facility, that was a pivotal moment. I was like, we are so screwed because there is no leadership right now. Right now, we're in a free fall.
essentially film your clothing. And one thing that really struck me was when I watched the footage, and I'll play it for you now, is that it almost feels like there's a ghost.
When we audited the hospital, we were missing something like 600 plus nurses. And that is both inpatient and outpatient side. And so they gave us the commitment that by coming up in June, they would have those 600 hired.
The fact that it was critical infrastructure was defined by the Patriot Act, which for everybody, it was essentially an act that came out of 9/11. So it was a pretty much like a war time measure. It's a wartime logic. And so essential workers within this infrastructure are treated like soldiers to some degree.
We can save people, we can kill people if we want to. You know, I think if there were no nurses, then the world would end, because the doctor may give the diagnosis, but we are actually the one who are doing the work.
So I kind of felt like when you took really time, you figured out, you found stuff, you looked around what to place on top of each other and which way and all this, and then you just had to crash it. And it was a little bit of the feeling like when you have all these things put on top of each other, then they are needed of each other, that the top one is only standing when the bottom one is standing.
Thank you. Sorry, it was a little jagged on my playback, but I'm glad we got to at least hear it. Thank you.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I mean, sure. I also don't want to take too much time. I feel like I've spoken a lot, but what you saw was essentially footage that was either from the Zoom room where we were holding the workshop, or footage that the nurses had actually themselves shot. And so every week they would go out and shoot and follow a little prompt or an exercise and bring that footage back to the Zoom room so that we could discuss it and have a conversation. And we talked about everything from the actual documents, the sort of memorandum that identifies them as necessary workers, and what the juridical language that sort of puts them in that position of extreme vulnerability and possible death, like how that sort of came about. And we just saw a little bit in the video about that in 9/11. And then we really tried to focus on their own experiences and sort of how complex it is effectively to be the one who's upholding the system and at the same time be put at an enormous amount of risk.